When the Canadian Pacific took control over the Delaware and Hudson, it became something other than Conrail in the region. Since then, one of the biggest advantages that area rail fans has had was the addition of the two Canadian Class 1s, Canadian Pacific in 1991 and the Canadian National that would come along in the 2000s. Fast forward to February 16, 2016, and the Canadian Pacific Sunbury subdivision is now the Norfolk Southern Sunbury line. As well, the Canadian National 30T and 31T train symbols that used to run to Enola have since been cut back to Binghamton, New York. The freight that they haul still moves to Enola, but has since been folded into the 11Z and 14R train symbols. Gone with those trains are the exclusive lash-ups of Canadian locomotive power. Despite heavy rains and gloomy skies, the railroad's still at work, and so are we. The first train in our lineup is the Enola, Pennsylvania to Binghamton, New York bound train 14R, with 6 classic and colorful bygone locomotives, at least 5 of them are, the most rare being that last one, a cowl body SD60F. The 50 series locomotives were a bum product. A lot had to do with the fact that the 50 series were very similar to the 40 series, but with a higher red line to generate more power. Evidently, that higher red line hit a resonant frequency with a lot of components, especially the new electronics that were installed for the first time on that model line. Stuff vibrated loose a lot, and supposedly the problem had been remedied on most 50 series by lowering the red line or various other factory fixes. This did not stop CSX from becoming very disenchanted with EMD and shifting most of their locomotive business to GE. That was probably a gripe originated by the mechanical forces and echoed by road crews when the units died out on the road. The F in the locomotive designation means the cowl body, which is drafty in the winter, hot in the summer, dark in the back, and a pain to operate if you aren't facing forward on the main line. Example, switching. I think this was a crew-originated gripe that applied to anything cowl, such as the F45s and the SD50F and SD60F. Canadian National number 5561 is one of 64 custom-designed SD60F units that were built by GMD in London, Ontario. Although the SD60Fs are the only such locomotives that were built, they were externally identical to their 60 Canadian National SD50F predecessors. CN retired the SD50Fs years ago and most were scrapped. A handful were sold to the Dakota, Minnesota Valley, and Western where they continue to operate. On the inside, the SD60F is mechanically similar to a standard SD60 or SD60M locomotive. On the exterior, the car body design featured a number of CN innovations, not the least of which is the North American cab. CN developed the now familiar cab design in cooperation with Montreal Locomotive Works and General Motors diesels in the early 1970s, and had specified it on all new locomotives that were purchased since 1973. Between 1982 and 1992, CN specified full car body designs for its locomotives in an effort to provide better working conditions for train crews and maintainers in inclement weather. Full car body models included the Bombardier, or some call it Bombardier, HR616s, and the GE-840CMs, in addition to the aforementioned SD50F and SD60F locomotives. The full car body or cowl design was similar to EMD F45 and FP45 models, but incorporated another CN innovation, the Draper taper. Named for its Canadian National designer, the taper was an indentation in the car body located just behind the cab to afford better visibility to the rear. Six-axle freight locomotives built with a cowl car body are a rare design when looking at the overall quantity of models built for North American service. Compared to the thousands of GP9s, SD40-2s, and C44-9Ws that were built, no one cowl-bodied model exceeded 100 locomotives ordered. Canadian National ordered 4 of the 6 six-axle freight cowl designs built new and acquired 2 additional cowl models with the purchase of the regional railroad Wisconsin Central in 2001. Canadian National's all-time roster of cowls owned totaled over 200 locomotives. The models that were purchased new were EMD's Canadian affiliate-built GMD SD50Fs and SD60Fs, General Electric C40-8M, and the Bombardier HR616s. All are off the roster today except maybe with the exception of the C48-Ms. With the purchase of the Wisconsin Central in 2001, Canadian National added EMD's F45 and FP45 models to its roster. These were built for the Santa Fe, with both models equipped with 20-cylinder 645 engines. The FP45 is the same mechanically as the F45, but was built on a longer frame to hold a steam generator for passenger service. Unfortunately, their service on the Canadian National was short-lived. The takeover of the BC Rail in 2004 brought additional C40-8Ms to Canadian National's roster, with virtually all retaining their BC Rail colors until retirement. Canadian National began shedding its HR616s first, followed by the SD50F and then the SD60F. As of late 2024, the CN still rostered a single active C40-8M numbered 4609, which could be found in yard service in British Columbia, as its days of mainline service were most likely long over. Fortunately, a handful of CN's SD50Fs and SD60Fs have found new life on several short lines. Midwest Short Line, Dakota, Missouri Valley, and Western operates both SD50Fs and the SD60Fs, while another Midwest company, Northern Plains Railroad, owns SD60Fs. A DMVW affiliate in Montana operates 2 SD50Fs in captive aggregate service. Further east, Aberdeen, Carolina, and Western operates SD60Fs. In terms of operating them, the crews generally did not like any of the cowl-bodied units. Both pulled about the same lousy visibility, same dead animal smell, but there was something about the control stands. The 5400s, for whatever reason, had worse control stands. The labels above all of the switches, I'm talking about the step lights, the generator field, and other stuff, wore away so as to be illegible. Combined with the fact that each switch is different on each locomotive. The ditch lights may be on the far right on the 5401, while second from the right on the 5402. These things also compounded the problems. Also, the controllers were worn out on the 5400s, though it was easy to try to slap the throttle into idle, only to have it move past the indent and into full dynamic braking mode without the required 10-second waiting period. The relays behind the electrical cabinet door start switching right away in a machine gun staccato-like fashion, and the locomotive lurches as suddenly as you get 600 amps going in the wrong way on your emitter, followed by a squeal of steel on steel that announces that you now have a fresh flat spot on your wheels. The material used to cover the control stand was often cracked and caught all sorts of dirt and cigarette ash. The head-end devices are afterthoughts, sometimes placed up high, sometimes placed low while the radios were perched above you. I've even been told that they fell out and hit the engineers on their way to the floor. The bells and sand buttons were placed differently for each unit, and some were a push-button type and some had the older-style brass pull valves. Half of the units had lost their clip to hold your paperwork, and since the stands are at an angle and they vibrated so badly, you had to put your paperwork in different locations, sometimes obscuring the gauges. The seats were uncomfortable to sit in for any length of time, but especially for the time that you sat in a siding while waiting for the cab to arrive. All in all, they were not nearly as ergonomic as they were touted to be in the press upon their introduction. The one positive of the covered wagons, which is what they were often called, over the conventional style units, and this goes for the F45s as well, is that with the side door, the cabs were physically larger. You could stash your grip against the back wall and not have to trip over it while you get up to go to the fridge or to the bathroom. In the days leading up to the Norfolk Southern takeover of the line, Canadian Pacific, now under the leadership of Hunter Harrison, had let the line go to rot. Because of this, NS had to perform a lot of emergency maintenance and upgrades right out of the gate. Remembering that this is February 2016, the next train up the line was an oddball Train 90M. 90M was a generic train symbol that was used on many types of maintenance-away trains. Today it's being used on a single locomotive and a specially rigged flat car. That link belt earth mover has a special attachment that's used for cutting trees. It basically grinds them into trackside mulch. And besides that, note the Canadian Pacific on the Norfolk Southern work train. Fast forwarding ahead, it's now February 16, 2018, and it's another dank, dreary, gloomy, overcast day. The train coming down the line is the southbound 11Z with more extinct NS power and now rare Canadian National power. The green and white containers make it obvious that this train will be stopping to work Taylor Yard. The days of the K82 extra freight symbols are gone, and the mainline freights now have to do their work along the way. By the time that I made it down to Taylor Yard proper, the 11Z had made their set out and was reversing back to tie on to their train. Note the broken windshield wiper arm that frustrates the engineer to the point that he just turns them off altogether. And as the 4 locomotives move back toward their train, also take note of the K81 power to the extreme left of the screen, working the intermodal yard. While the 11Z crew made their way back to their train, I made my way back up the hill to catch the tail end, moving past Lackawanna Avenue. The other reason that I moved back north were these 2 NS units stately perched on the Bridge 60 overpass. About a month earlier, NS began moving DL freight directly into Steamtown, power and all. That made for some interesting visitors to the area. And while I'm not sure why these particular engines were here, they're not road power and they're not the local power. We saw that on KD1 down in Taylor. They were a sight for sore eyes. Number 3343 is an ex-Conrail SD40-2 that was built in August of 1977 as the Conrail number 6381 and was repainted into Norfolk Southern's black on April 14, 2004. The GP38-2 number 5669 has a much more interesting paint job and history. Electromotive Division produced the GP38 from January 1966 to December 1971. During that time, 733 units were built for railroads in the United States, having 706, Canada having 21, and Mexico having 6. GP38-2 number 5669 is the star of this lineup. It was built as a Southern Railway Jeep in 1971 and once formerly numbered as the NS 2860. Today, it's one of the highest numbered GP38s on the NS system with only the 5670, the 5671, the 5672, and the 5673 above it. It also sports the first-generation Operation Lifesaver paint scheme found only on a handful of NS locomotives. Although seemingly firmly situated around the Binghamton, New York environ, the exotic Jeep could be found almost anywhere and even did time at Steamtown. Besides the direct access to Canadian and New England freight markets, another advantage to NS's purchase of the D&H South lines was that the southern tier trains could be detoured in emergency situations. There was also another reason for me to head back north, as I was to catch the reroute train 309 coming down the line. At the time, 309 was a Binghamton, New York to Mormon Yard in Bellevue, Ohio manifest. Train 309 still runs today, but it's now one half of the 315-316 manifest duo, I think. The best part of the reroute trains for me is seeing unfamiliar freight cars and sometimes even foreign power locomotives. Today we have both in the form of UP and BNSF power and a rolling stock gold mine. This 309 is a big one at over 150 cars. I'll do the heavy lifting for you. The cars to look out for are the Southern Railway 2-bay covered hoppers, that cut of David Joseph bathtub gondolas that came up on yesterday's Train 37T from the last time capsule video, the steel coil cars, the Wisconsin and Southern boxcar, the BNSF reefers, the Scowler cylindrical covered hopper patched for the Wisconsin and Southern, the Union Pacific mechanical reefers, the gray high-cube boxcar now patched for the TTX Corporation, and the Galveston Wharves boxcar now patched for the Laurinburg and Southern. And here's a little bonus for you. That Wellsboro and Corning class unit boxcar that was in the consist of that Train 14R at the beginning of this video, just in case you missed it. We fast forward again, this time to 2020. PSR is upon us. Trains 36T and 37T have been abolished. Train 14R inherited the freight tonnage of the 37T and its problems. The easiest identifier of the former 37T are the gondola cars of steel. The other identifying feature is the underpowered train itself. As you can clearly see before you, this train is losing momentum, and fast. The end result is that this train stalled. I can't remember if a crew came out of Taylor to push the disabled train to Dalton, or if the unfortunate crew of 14R had to double the hill. Either way. Well, there you go. Welcome to Precision Scheduled Railroading in 2020.